The village of Idioma woke before dawn, wrapped in gold and song. Roosters cried from the rooftops as the first light brushed the thatched huts with warmth. Women moved gracefully between the morning fires, balancing clay pots on their heads, laughter ringing like bells through the mist. The river beyond the palm trees shimmered in rhythm with their songs, and the world smelled of smoke, yam, and peace. Among them was Zuri, a young woman whose hands were always busy and whose smile carried light. Her laughter was soft, her steps quiet, but her spirit filled the air like the scent of rain before a storm. She was the daughter everyone in Idioma admired, respectful, kind, and quick to help anyone in need. Even the elders said she had an old soul, born with grace instead of pride. But behind that grace, Zuri's family carried a heaviness that no one could see. Her father, Obi, had once been one of the wealthiest traders in the region, a man whose name carried weight at the market square. Yet time and misfortune had turned that weight into shame. His debts to a powerful merchant, Chief Dogo, had grown like weeds, choking his pride and leaving him desperate. Still, he walked through the village with his head high, pretending that his pockets were not empty and that his honor had not been sold piece by piece. Zuri didn't know the depth of her father's troubles, but she felt the cold in their home that words could not explain. Her mother, Ngozi, who once sang while pounding yam, had grown quiet. Her eyes darted away from Zuri's too often, as though they carried a secret she was afraid would spill. That morning, Zuri finished sweeping the compound and went to fetch water from the well. The path to the well cut through the heart of the village, where the children laughed and men sharpened machetes under the palm shade. As she walked, people called out her name, smiling, "Zuri the bright one. Zuri the heart of Obi's house." She smiled back, shy but warm. She believed in goodness. She believed in family. She believed that every sunrise brought a promise of peace. By the time she returned home, her father was sitting in the courtyard, staring at the red earth beneath his feet. His jaw was tight, his eyes heavy with something unspoken. Her mother stood behind him, arms folded, her body stiff. There was no fire burning, no morning chatter, just silence thick enough to feel. Zuri placed the pot beside the wall and greeted them softly. "Good morning, Papa." "Good morning, Mama." Neither answered. Her father finally looked up, forcing a weak smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Zuri, my daughter," he said, voice low. "You have always been the light of this house. No matter what comes, remember that." Zuri frowned, unsure what he meant. Her mother turned away, hiding her face. And in that fragile silence, the drums from the village square began to beat, a distant reminder that life went on outside their pain. Zuri knelt beside her father, touching his hand gently. "Papa, what troubles you?" He didn't answer. Instead, his gaze moved to the horizon, where the sun had fully risen, bright and golden, merciless in its clarity. He whispered something to himself, words she couldn't catch, but they carried the weight of farewell. The breeze that passed through the compound that morning carried the scent of betrayal yet to come. The village of honor stood proud and unaware, while within one quiet home, a father's fear was preparing to trade his daughter's future for his pride. Zuri smiled faintly at her father before walking away to prepare breakfast. She did not see the tears that gathered in his eyes as he whispered to his wife, "It will save us, Ngozi." It must. The river sang in the distance. The sun rose higher. And somewhere, fate began to write her name. That evening, the warmth of the day faded into a still, uneasy silence. The sun sank behind the palm trees, leaving the sky bruised with orange and indigo. Crickets began their slow song, but even their rhythm couldn't fill the tension that had settled over Obi's compound. The scent of cooking fire drifted faintly, yet no one had the heart to eat. Inside the small hut, Zuri's parents sat facing each other, a gourd of palm wine between them, half finished, half forgotten. Her mother's eyes were swollen from silent tears, and her father's hands trembled as he rubbed his temple, his mind pacing between pride and despair. "I told you, Obi," Ngozi whispered hoarsely, breaking the silence. "There must be another way." Her husband's reply came heavy, like a door closing forever. "There is no other way. Chief Dogo warned me, if I don't pay him before the moon turns, he'll come for everything. Our home, our name, our place among the elders." Ngozi's voice cracked. "And so you'll trade our daughter instead?" Obi didn't answer at first. The flickering firelight carved deep shadows across his face, aging him years in seconds. "You think I want this?" he murmured. "You think I haven't prayed every night for another choice? But we have nothing left. No goats, no grain, no land to sell. Chief Dogo said he will forgive the debt if I give Zuri to his household, to serve. He said she will live well." Ngozi laughed bitterly, tears falling. Serve? You mean she will be a slave, Obi? A servant in another man's house. She is your daughter, the only good thing we have not ruined. Obi slammed his palm on the mat, eyes flashing. She will live. Do you hear me? She will live and we will be spared disgrace. Would you rather see the guards drag me through the market like a thief? Would you rather our name be spat upon by the people of Idioma? His voice broke at the end, softening to a whisper. We will lose everything, Ngozi. The name of this house, my father's legacy, it will vanish. I cannot let that happen. Ngozi's hands trembled. And what of her legacy? Obi turned away. He couldn't meet her gaze. The gourd tipped slightly, spilling wine onto the ground, a dark stain that crept slowly across the dirt, like guilt spreading through a soul. Outside, Zuri sat near the doorway, quietly weaving palm fronds into a basket. She could hear their voices, muffled by the wall but heavy with something that made her stomach twist. Her hands stilled mid-weave. Every syllable seemed to echo inside her chest. Sell her. Live well. Save our name. Her throat went dry. Her breath caught. But she didn't move. She sat frozen, listening as her father's voice lowered again, tired, defeated, unrecognizable. She will forgive us one day, he whispered. When she understands what it means to carry a name. Ngozi broke then. Her sobs filled the room, spilling through the cracks in the wall until even the wind outside seemed to hush in sympathy. Zuri pressed her hand to her mouth, tears gathering in her eyes as her heart cracked quietly inside her chest. She didn't want to believe it. Her father, the man who had taught her to always tell the truth, who lifted her onto his shoulders to watch festivals, who called her my pride, could not possibly mean this. But the words she'd heard were too sharp to be mistaken. By the time the moon climbed high above the palm trees, Zuri had stopped crying. Her face was pale in the moonlight, her eyes distant but steady. Inside her heart, something fragile had shattered, and from its pieces, something new began to form, not hate but the first quiet spark of strength. When her parents emerged from the hut, they found her sitting outside, still weaving. She looked up and smiled, not with joy but with grace. Papa, she said softly, I heard you. Obi froze where he stood. His lips parted but no words came. Ngozi's breath caught in her throat. I will go where you send me, Zuri continued, voice trembling but calm. But one day, Papa, remember this. A name can only be saved by truth, not by sacrifice. And before either of them could speak, she stood, walked to her small hut, and closed the door gently behind her. That night, the drums of Idioma played somewhere far away, cheerful and distant. But in one quiet corner of the village, a family sat in silence, knowing that their house had lost its heart long before the sun would rise again. The next morning broke with the cruel beauty of clear skies. The sun rose without shame, golden light spilling across Idioma like spilled honey, yet in Obi's compound, it felt like a funeral. The drums that usually greeted dawn were silent. Even the chickens seemed to scratch the ground without sound. Zuri dressed slowly, her fingers tracing the edges of her faded wrapper. It was the same cloth her mother had sewn for her first harvest festival, now dull and thin, but it carried memories warmer than any silk. She tied it around her waist with trembling hands, then brushed her long black hair behind her shoulders. Her mother stood by the doorway, red-eyed and hollow. You don't have to look at him, she whispered. You don't have to say anything. But Zuri only smiled faintly. Mama, I must. If I leave without looking at him, my heart will never rest. Outside, Chief Dogo's men had already arrived, 3 broad-shouldered men in bright wrappers, gold necklaces glinting in the morning sun. Behind them stood a horse-drawn cart, covered with woven mats. The smell of dust and power followed them. Chief Dogo himself waited beside it, a thick man with sharp eyes that never truly smiled. He carried himself like a man who had never been told no. Obi stood before him, shoulders stiff, head bowed slightly. His once proud face looked older than the night before. In his hand, he held a small calabash filled with palm wine, the symbol of agreement. Obi, Chief Dogo said, his voice deep, oily, smooth. You are wise to keep your word. The dead is forgotten. From this day, your house will stand again among the honored. Zuri's mother let out a strangled sound, but Obi only nodded, unable to speak. He poured a drop of palm wine on the earth, sealing the bargain before the ancestors. Zuri stepped forward then, her bare feet brushing the dusty ground. All eyes turned to her, and even Chief Dogo's gaze softened with greedy admiration. This is your daughter? He asked. Fine one. She will do well in my compound. I keep my servants fed, clothed and useful. The way he said useful made Zuri's stomach twist, but she kept her chin high. Her mother began to weep quietly behind her, her body shaking with every breath. Zuri looked at her father one last time. Papa, she whispered. Obi's eyes flickered toward her but didn't meet hers. His lips trembled, then pressed into a line. I will send word when I can, he said stiffly. Be obedient. Do not bring shame to this house. The words cut through her like a blade. For a moment she thought she might fall, but then something fierce rose inside her chest. Shame? She thought. You've already buried it here. Chief Dogo clapped his hands. Let's go. The sun waits for no man. The guards moved toward Zuri. Her mother broke then, rushing forward, grabbing Zuri's hands, pressing her forehead to her daughter's. Forgive me, she cried. Forgive us both. Zuri's voice came calm, almost too calm. Mama, don't cry. The river doesn't forget where it came from. I'll find my way back, one day. She climbed onto the cart without another word. The wheels creaked, the oxen groaned, and the cart began to move down the dirt path that led out of Idioma. Dust rose behind her like smoke, swallowing the image of her home, her parents, her childhood. The road was long and quiet, lined with tall grasses whispering secrets in the wind. Zuri kept her eyes fixed ahead, refusing to look back. The guards laughed among themselves, throwing careless words, but she didn't hear them. Her mind replayed her father's face, his silence, his pride, and her mother's trembling hands. When the sun reached its peak, they arrived at Chief Dogo's compound, vast, decorated with carved gates and scarlet banners that fluttered like tongues of flame. Inside, servants hurried in silence, their faces blank, their eyes lowered. Chief Dogo dismounted and turned to her. From this moment you serve my household. You'll report to my head maid Sefyu. You'll fetch water, clean and cook when ordered. If you obey, you'll eat. If you don't, he let the sentence hang in the air like smoke. Zuri nodded once. I understand. Her calm unnerved him for a moment, but he laughed it off. Good. I like quiet ones. They last longer. As she was led inside, she passed rows of servants, women and girls, some no older than herself. Their eyes followed her, curious, pitying, empty. That night, when all had gone quiet, Zuri sat alone near the servants' quarters. The moon hung low, bright and pitiless. The world she had known was gone, but her mother's words echoed softly in her mind. The river doesn't forget where it came from. Zuri touched the earth beneath her fingers, whispered to the wind and made a vow, not of vengeance but of becoming. I will not be the name you buried, she whispered to the stars. I will be the one you will one day speak with pride. And as she lifted her head, the faintest breeze stirred through the night, soft but sure, as if the ancestors themselves had heard her. The days that followed blurred into one another, each one grinding against Zuri's spirit like stone against grain. Chief Dogo's compound was a kingdom of fear dressed in color. From afar, it looked like wealth, crimson walls, bronze gates, courtyards glowing with the shimmer of fine fabrics. But within, it reeked of smoke, sweat, and quiet sorrow. Zuri rose before dawn every morning, long before the rooster's first cry. Her bare feet met cold earth as she joined the other servants, a row of weary faces carrying clay pots to the well at the edge of the compound. The air was thick with dew and silence. No one dared speak too loud. At first, Zuri kept her head low. She obeyed every order, endured every insult, every slap from the overseer's stick. She washed clothes until her fingers cracked, cooked food she was never allowed to taste, and cleaned the floors that Chief Dogo's wives soiled with their pride. The head maid, Sefyu, a tall woman with scarred hands and eyes sharp as glass, ruled over the servants like a warden. She rarely smiled, but she was fairer than most. One night, as Zuri struggled to carry a heavy basin of water, Sefyu's voice broke the darkness. Girl, she said, you came from a home that used to smell of palm oil and laughter, didn't you? Zuri froze. How did you know? Sefyu gave a humorless laugh. You walk like someone who once believed she mattered. Zuri said nothing. But something in her chest tightened, not shame, not fear, pride buried deep but alive. Weeks turned into months. The whispers began. Some said Zuri was cursed. A girl sold by her own family could not bring blessing. Others said she was too calm, too quiet, that the ancestors must have their eyes on her. But one by one, even the cruelest servants began to watch her differently. She never shouted, never fought, but she worked harder than any of them. When one of the younger girls fell sick, Zuri gave her portion of food. When Sefyu's hand bled from an injury, Zuri stayed up through the night grinding herbs for her wound. And slowly her name began to carry weight, soft at first like a whisper in the wind. "Zuri," they'd say. "That girl moves like light through shadow." One morning, Chief Dogo himself noticed. He had come to inspect his kitchens, flanked by 2 guards. His eyes fell on Zuri as she knelt, pounding yam with rhythmic grace, her arms strong, her face streaked with sweat but calm. "You," he said suddenly. Zuri looked up. "Yes, master? You're the one Obi's people sold, aren't you?" "Yes." He studied her for a moment, his lips curling into a smirk. "Strange. You serve like someone born to command. Be careful, that kind of pride can kill." Zuri met his gaze, not with challenge but with quiet strength. "Only if it's false, master." His smile faltered for a breath, then returned sharper. "We shall see." He turned and left, but his glance lingered, the kind that promised both danger and destiny. That night, rain fell hard, heavy, relentless, soaking the compound in silver. Thunder rolled across the sky, shaking the air. Zuri sat beneath a small shelter, her hair damp, her body aching. She thought of her mother's face, her father's silence, the sound of the cart wheels leaving home. For the first time in months, tears slipped down her cheeks. "I am still yours, Mama," she whispered to the night. "But I am no longer the same girl you gave away." Lightning flashed. In that instant, Zuri saw the reflection of her face in a puddle, not the servant girl, not the child who was sold, but something else. A woman being forged by suffering into something unbreakable. A few days later, an unexpected visitor arrived. It was a traveling merchant from Idioma, carrying spices and fabrics. The servants whispered when they heard the name of Zuri's village. Sephu found her behind the kitchens, her eyes distant, her hands trembling slightly. "Do you wish to hear what news he brings?" Sephu asked softly. Zuri hesitated. "No," she said after a long pause. "Not yet. The girl they left behind must remain buried for now." Sephu watched her, understanding dawning. "Then who are you now?" Zuri's lips curved into a faint, fierce smile. "Someone they will one day remember." That night, the wind howled through the rafters, carrying faint echoes of drums she hadn't heard since her childhood. They sounded far away, yet they stirred her heart with strange warmth. Zuri lifted her head to the night sky. "Ancestors," she whispered, "if my blood must carry shame, let it also carry fire. Let me rise, not for revenge but for remembrance." Somewhere deep in the compound, the rainwater from the roofs gathered into a stream, running past her feet, trickling toward the earth as though carrying her words to the spirits below. And the spirits, though silent, were listening. The next dawn broke quietly, no songs, no rooster's cry, only the sound of brooms sweeping and wooden spoons striking clay pots. But beneath the silence, something was shifting. The servants whispered Zuri's name now not with pity but with a quiet kind of faith. Life in Chief Dogo's compound followed a cruel rhythm, morning orders, endless labor, and harsh punishments for the smallest mistake. Yet Zuri had learned to move within that rhythm like a hidden melody. Her silence was not surrender anymore, it was strategy. When the head cook fell ill, Zuri stepped in without being asked. Her hands remembered the recipes of her mother, the aroma of smoked tilapia with palm oil, the taste of ground melon soup seasoned just right. She worked all morning, and when the meal was served, the entire courtyard smelled alive. Chief Dogo, used to bland food, raised an eyebrow at the taste. "Who cooked this?" he demanded. "Zuri," one of the guards replied. He nodded slowly. "Tell her the kitchen is hers until further notice." That single sentence changed everything. Within a few weeks, Zuri became the heart of the household. She organized the other servants, divided work fairly, and managed supplies with care. Even the cruel overseer found himself silenced before her calm authority. Her kindness disarmed the hateful, and her diligence earned reluctant respect. Sephu, the scarred head maid, began watching her differently, not as a rival but as a successor. One night, as they sat peeling yams by lantern light, Sephu said quietly, "You are not meant to remain here, Zuri. I can feel it in the way you breathe. You carry the scent of tomorrow." Zuri smiled faintly. "Then help me reach it." But not everyone welcomed her rise. Among the women of the compound, jealousy simmered like oil on fire. Chief Dogo's third wife, Amira, young, beautiful, and vain, despised how the servants now whispered Zuri's name with respect. "She acts as if she owns this place," Amira hissed to another wife. "Let's see if she still smiles when the master turns against her." And so they plotted. One evening, Amira poured wine into a small clay cup and dropped a white powder, stolen from the medicine man's hut, into it. Then she called Zuri. "You have served faithfully, girl. she said with a false smile. The master is pleased tonight. Take this cup to him, say it is from me. Zuri bowed and took the cup. But as she turned to leave, the old healer of the household, Baba Tund, stepped from the shadows. His eyes, cloudy but sharp with wisdom, caught the faint shimmer of the liquid. Set that cup down, child, he said softly. Zuri froze. Poison, he whispered. Not meant for the master, for you. Her breath caught. For me. They fear what you are becoming, he said. The fire inside you frightens those who live in shadows. Zuri placed the cup gently on the ground, heart pounding. Why warn me? Baba Tund smiled sadly. Because once, long ago, someone like you warned me. Kindness is a debt we never truly pay. That night, Zuri didn't sleep. She sat awake, staring at the moon through the narrow window. The realization cut deep, she was not just surviving now, she was threatening those who ruled. But instead of fear, a new fire sparked in her chest. If they wish to bury me again, she whispered, they'll find the soil too shallow this time. The next day she went to the market with the other servants. The streets of Idioma were loud with life, traders shouting prices, children chasing goats, women balancing baskets of fruit. For the first time in years, Zuri felt air that did not belong to Chief Dogo. There she met a man selling woven mats. His name was Afani, a quiet man with honest eyes. He noticed her careful gaze, her humble but proud posture. You're not from here, he said kindly. No, she replied. I was brought here. Then may you leave by your own choosing, he said, bowing slightly. His words lingered in her mind as she walked back to the compound. Leave by your own choosing. It was the first time she realized she could. Back at the compound, whispers began again, but this time they were different. The servants spoke of Zuri as a bringer of peace. The guards, once cruel, now greeted her with quiet respect. Even Chief Dogo noticed the calm that followed her presence. Strange, he muttered one night to Baba Tund. The girl they sold into my house now rules it without a crown. Baba Tund nodded. That is the way of true power, my lord. It does not shout, it transforms. Chief Dogo laughed. Perhaps. But such light rarely lasts long under my roof. That same night, under a wide moon, Zuri walked to the courtyard well. She stared into the water's surface, seeing her reflection shimmer beneath the stars. I came here a shadow, she whispered. But now I carry my own light. Behind her, the wind stirred the leaves, like the low hum of ancestors answering her vow. She smiled faintly, touching the scar on her wrist from her early days of labor. It no longer hurt. It gleamed silver under the moonlight, like a mark of survival. Let them fear what I'm becoming, she said softly. Because I am no longer theirs to destroy. Weeks turned into months, and Zuri's name began to echo far beyond the walls of Chief Dogo's compound. Traders spoke of a servant girl whose wisdom settled quarrels among workers. Travelers repeated tales of how she had saved a sick child by fetching herbs herself when others feared the rain. People called her the girl who shines where darkness sits. Inside the compound, Chief Dogo noticed something different in the air. The servants no longer scattered at his shout. The wives whispered less about one another. Even the guards carried out orders without cruelty. One evening he watched as Zuri crossed the courtyard, the sunset painting gold across her skin. She carried a tray of food, his food steady in her hands, her eyes calm and fearless. He had seen slaves tremble before him. He had seen men bow until their backs broke. But this girl, she carried herself like someone who had nothing left to fear. Come closer, he ordered. Zuri approached, set down the tray and bowed lightly, not too low, just enough to respect without surrender. You've changed this house, he said, his tone curious rather than cruel. Why? Zuri met his gaze, her voice soft but steady. Because peace is heavier than power, my lord. Those who hold peace cannot be moved. Chief Dogo chuckled. You speak like an elder, yet you are barely more than a girl. Zuri smiled faintly. Wisdom comes to those who are forced to listen to pain. He looked at her for a long moment, then waved her away. But even after she left, her words stayed in his mind, unsettling, echoing. For the first time in years, Chief Dogo felt something unfamiliar, the weight of his own reflection. That night, Amira, the jealous wife, approached him, her voice dripping with false concern. My lord, the servants whisper her name too much. They say she brings blessings. They say even your crops flourish when she speaks. Chief Dogo frowned. You sound afraid, Amira? I am wise enough to see what you refuse to see, she hissed. This girl will take your household from you without lifting a hand. She is witch-born, mark my words. He dismissed her with a growl, but her words planted a seed of poison in his mind. That night he could not sleep. Dreams haunted him, the girl's calm face glowing through smoke, her voice rising above the chaos like thunder. When he awoke, sweat drenched his body, and fear clung to him like a second skin. By morning, paranoia had found its home. The next few days turned heavy. The kindness Zuri had sown became twisted by suspicion. Guards began to watch her again. Servants lowered their voices when she passed. Even Baba Tun looked worried. Darkness moves again, he warned her one evening. The master fears what he cannot control. Fear makes even wise men blind. Zuri nodded slowly. Then let him be blind. I have seen what light can do. That night, she went to her small corner of the servants' quarters and wrote a single line on a piece of palm parchment she had begged from a trader. If they cage the bird again, she will still sing, louder than before. But before dawn the storm broke. Chief Dogo summoned her to the courtyard. The air was cold and sharp, the sky swollen with clouds. Zuri, he said loudly, his voice echoing off the walls, I have been warned of your witchcraft. You have poisoned my wives against me and bewitched my servants into disobedience. The crowd of onlookers gasped. Zuri stood motionless, the wind tugging at her wrapper. My lord, she said calmly, I have done nothing but serve this house. The peace you feel is not witchcraft, it is truth. Chief Dogo slammed his staff against the ground. Silence. No truth comes from a slave's mouth. Amira stepped forward with false tears. I saw her speak to spirits near the well at night. She calls on shadows, my lord. She is dangerous. The villagers who had gathered murmured nervously. Zuri looked around, at faces that had once smiled at her, now twisted by fear. Then she lifted her chin. If peace frightens you, then I will take it with me. Before the guards could grab her, she turned and walked toward the gates. Every step was measured, every breath a vow. Chief Dogo shouted, let her go. The rain will deal with her. And as she stepped out into the open sky, the first drops began to fall. The rain grew fierce as Zuri walked away from the compound, her bare feet splashing through mud. Each drop felt like a baptism, washing away what remained of the chains. The storm roared above, lightning splitting the clouds, but she didn't flinch. Behind her, thunder cracked, not as destruction but as declaration. The wind tore at her clothes, the rain blinded her, but her steps never slowed. She whispered into the storm, if this is exile, then let it be my rebirth. In that moment, a flash of lightning struck a nearby tree, splitting it in two. Fire met rain, but instead of dying, the flames burned steady, golden, and strong. Zuri smiled. Even the storm knows my name. By the time dawn returned, Chief Dogo's compound felt hollow. The air was heavy and still. Servants moved like ghosts, their work slow and joyless. Baba Tun sat by the gate, shaking his head. They think they cast her out, he murmured to himself. But they only set her free. For 3 days the rain did not stop. It washed through the red soil, flooding the paths and bending the tall grass until the village seemed half drowned. But Zuri walked. She had no shelter, no food, and no companion except the storm itself. Yet strangely she did not feel alone. Each step she took felt guided, the wind behind her like a guardian's breath, the rain cooling her fevered thoughts. Whenever she stumbled, lightning lit the road ahead, as if the sky itself refused to let her vanish. By the fourth dawn she reached the edge of Idioma, where the river widened into a shimmering plain. The storm had gentled into drizzle, and the horizon glowed faintly with morning light. Her clothes clung to her body, torn and heavy, but her eyes, they burned bright. She collapsed beneath a baobab tree, exhausted. For the first time in days she allowed herself to cry, not in weakness but in release. Each tear that fell mixed with rainwater and disappeared into the soil. Take it, she whispered to the earth. Take everything they gave me, the shame, the hurt, the betrayal, and grow something better. When she woke again, the sky was clear. The air smelled of new beginnings. Birds called from the trees, their songs piercing the silence like promises. A group of travelers approached, farmers on their way to the next village, their carts loaded with yams and cassava. One of them, a woman with a bright red head wrap, stopped. Sister, are you alive? She called out. Zuri opened her eyes slowly and smiled weakly. Alive enough to start again. The woman helped her stand, offering her a piece of roasted plantain. Come with us. You look like someone who's walked too long alone. Zuri nodded, and for the first time since her exile she accepted help. They took her to a smaller village called Umuse, known for its fertile land and kind people. The chief there was an old man named Ikeen, a fair leader with a fondness for wisdom. When the travelers told him how they had found Zuri, he invited her to stay and rest. Days passed and Zuri began to heal. She helped in the fields, taught the children songs she remembered from her mother, and learned new ways of farming and weaving. Her hands found purpose again and her laughter, faint at first, began to return. But it was not long before the people noticed something extraordinary about her. Crops she touched flourished. Sick goats she tended recovered faster than before. Even the river near the village seemed to run clearer after she bathed in it. Whispers began, "The woman who walks with rain." When they asked her about it, Zuri would only smile. "I am no spirit," she said. "Only a woman who has learned what storms can teach." One evening, as the sun bled into the horizon, Chief Ikin invited her to sit by the fire with the elders. "You have brought peace to my village," he said thoughtfully. "But I see in your eyes that peace still runs from you." Zuri bowed her head. "My peace is still learning to find its name." He studied her for a long moment. "Then perhaps you must teach it where to go. Stay here, Zuri. Let our young ones in the harvest. Let your peace become theirs." Zuri hesitated. The offer felt like warmth after endless cold. But part of her still ached, the part that remembered her father's voice, her mother's tears, and the betrayal that had started it all. "I will stay," she said softly, "but not forever. My heart has unfinished roads to walk." Over the months that followed, she became more than a helper, she became a symbol. When disputes arose between neighbors, Zuri's calm voice settled them. When drought threatened, rain fell after her prayers. When grief visited a home, she sat with them in silence until laughter returned. Children began to bring her small offerings, flowers, clay beads, baskets of fruit, whispering, "For the woman who carries blessings in her steps." And though she smiled and accepted their gifts with humility, every night before sleeping she looked up at the moon and whispered, "I forgive you, Father. And I forgive you, Mother. But one day you will see me, not as what you lost but as what I became." Then one fateful day travelers from Idioma arrived in Umuse. They brought with them tales of unrest. Chief Dogo's death, his household cursed by sickness and ruin. They spoke of the market in disarray, of how the once powerful family had lost all its standing. Zuri listened quietly from the edge of the crowd. Her heart did not leap with joy or revenge, only quiet sadness. "The storm spared none," she murmured. But when one of the travelers mentioned her family's name, her breath caught. "They are still alive," he said. "But disgraced. The father drinks, the mother begs, and their name is now a warning among traitors." Zuri looked toward the setting sun. So the circle returns. That night she could not sleep. The sound of distant thunder whispered across the hills, faint, familiar, calling. She stood at her window, hair loose, eyes glowing in the silver light. The rain began to fall again, soft and rhythmic. "It's time," she said aloud. "Not for vengeance, but for truth." The next morning she wrapped herself in a new robe, deep blue like the evening sky, embroidered with silver threads that shimmered like rainfall. She left Umuse as quietly as she had arrived, the villagers standing at the edge of the path watching her go. "Where will you go, Zuri?" a child called out. She smiled. "To where the storm began." And as she walked away the rain followed her, light, steady, unyielding, like a crown only the sky could see. The morning Zuri returned to Idioma, the air was heavy and strange, as if the land itself held its breath. The rains had softened the ground, and the familiar red clay squished under her feet. Every corner of the village carried ghosts. The marketplace where her mother once laughed, the path where her father's cart wheels creaked, the well where the women gossiped about her shame. But now all was quieter, emptier. The proud laughter that once filled the air had been replaced by whispers and hollow faces. The scent of decay lingered, like an old wound that refused to heal. Zuri walked through it with calm steps, her robe glimmering faintly with raindrops. Children paused in their play to stare. Women stopped pounding yam to murmur to each other. "Is that her? The one they sold? She looks blessed." She said nothing. Her face was serene but her eyes, they carried storms. When she reached the old family compound she found the gate half broken, the roof sagging, the courtyard overgrown with weeds. Chickens scratched at the dirt near what used to be her mother's flower pots. A shadow stirred behind the doorway. Then a familiar figure stepped out, her mother, now frail and sunken-eyed, wrapped in a dull, torn wrapper that used to be bright. At first, the woman did not recognize her. She squinted, blinking at the stranger before her. Who are you looking for?" Zuri took a slow breath. "For what was lost here." The woman frowned. Her lips trembled as she stepped closer. Then her eyes widened. "No," she whispered. "It cannot be." "It is," Zuri said gently. "It's me, Mama." Her mother gasped, hand flying to her mouth. She staggered back as if the sight burned. You should not be here. After what happened, after what we did." Zuri's eyes softened. "After what you chose," she said, voice calm but unyielding. Her mother sank to her knees, shaking. "Child, I have not known a moment's peace since that day. Every night I dream of you, calling my name in the rain. Forgive me, Zuri. I was afraid. We were all afraid." Zuri knelt too, placing a steady hand on her mother's shoulder. "Fear is the soil where cruelty grows. But I am not here for vengeance." Her mother looked up, tears glistening. "Then, why did you come?" Zuri gazed around the courtyard, at the cracked walls, the withered plants, the silence that once used to be joy. "Because this house once had a name. And I came to remind it what that name meant." As they spoke, villagers began to gather at the gate, drawn by the whispers spreading like wildfire. "The lost daughter has returned. The one they sold for their own pride. She came back shining like the rain." Her father appeared soon after, supported by a stick. His once proud posture was gone. His eyes were dim, his voice raspy. When he saw her, the stick fell from his hand. "Zuri," he breathed. "You live." "I did more than live," she said quietly. "I learned." He fell to his knees, trembling. "I was blinded by shame. I thought the family name was worth more than truth. But truth was you." For a long moment no one spoke. Then Zuri stepped forward and took his hand. His skin was rough and cold, but she held it firmly. "Stand, father. Not for me, for the man you still can be." He rose slowly, his eyes wet, his lips quivering as though words were too heavy to speak. Then came the murmurs from the crowd, voices tangled in guilt and awe. She forgave them? After what they did? She must be blessed by spirits. Zuri turned to them and raised her voice so all could hear. "You call me blessed because I survived," she said. "But I am not blessed for my pain. I am blessed because I refused to let it make me cruel." The crowd fell silent. Even the wind seemed to pause. "I came back not to curse but to remind you, no name is clean when it's washed with another's tears. No pride stands tall when it grows from betrayal. You taught your children to fear shame, but what you should have feared was losing kindness." Her words rolled through the square like thunder, quiet, deep, and unshakable. Her mother wept openly, clutching her wrapper to her chest. "You speak like a queen," she whispered. "Like one who never fell." Zuri smiled faintly. "I fell, Mama. But I did not stay fallen." The sky rumbled, low and distant. A single drop of rain fell onto her hand, then another and another, until a soft shower began. The villagers gasped as they saw it, the rain falling only over Zuri and her parents, like the heavens chose to crown their moment of truth. Her father knelt again, this time in humility. "The gods have spoken. The daughter we cast away has become our salvation." Zuri shook her head gently. "No, father. Forgiveness is your salvation." By the time the rain stopped, it felt as though the village itself had been cleansed. Children ran barefoot through puddles, laughing. Women wiped their tears, whispering, "She is the storm that blesses." Her mother took her hand. "Stay with us, Zuri. Help us rebuild what we broke." Zuri looked at her, then at the crowd, then at the sky. "I will stay," she said softly, "but not as the girl you sold. As the woman who carries your name, and makes it worthy again." That night, as the moon rose and the village feasted in her honor, old songs were sung anew, this time with her name woven into them. And from that night onward, when the rains came to Idioma, the elders would smile and say, "It is Zuri walking with the clouds again, reminding us that even those we wronged can bring us peace." The sun rose slowly over Idioma the next morning, not harsh, not blazing, but soft and golden, as though the heavens themselves bowed gently to the land. Mist still clung to the ground from the night's rain. It coiled between huts and over the fields, wrapping everything in a quiet, sacred peace. And in that calm, Zuri stood at the center of the village square, dressed in a robe of deep blue, the same color as the dawn before a storm. Her hair, now streaked with silver beads, shimmered when the light touched it. She no longer looked like the girl who was sold. She looked like the woman the world had been waiting for. The drums began first, soft, respectful beats that grew louder as more people gathered. Villagers came in from every corner, barefoot and breathless, carrying baskets of fruit, yams, and cloth. They came not to trade, not to celebrate a harvest, but to honor the woman they once cast away. Old women bowed low when she passed. Young girls stared with wide eyes, whispering to each other, "That's her, the one they sold for silver but who came back with gold in her spirit." Zuri smiled gently at them, her eyes glistening. "Don't remember my pain," she said softly. "Remember the strength it taught you." Her father, once proud and unbending, now stood among the crowd with his head bowed. His clothes were simple, his staff plain. When he saw her, he pressed a trembling hand to his heart. He had spent the night unable to sleep, weeping by the empty hearth where he used to boast of the family's name. Now, he whispered, "It is she who carries our name, higher than any pride I ever had." Zuri stepped forward and placed her hand on his shoulder. "Father, your pride destroyed what love built. But love, when it returns, can rebuild even ruins." He nodded, eyes full of tears. "Then let me rebuild with you." As the day went on, Zuri began to walk through the village, visiting those who had wronged her. At the market, she met Nanny, the gossip who had once shouted her shame for all to hear. Nanny trembled when Zuri approached. "Zuri, I was cruel. I laughed when you cried." Zuri's gaze was calm, deep as still water. "Then laugh no more at another's pain. Let your voice heal what your words once hurt." She gave the woman a small bracelet of woven reeds, a symbol of peace. And Nanny fell to her knees, clutching it as if it were gold. Later, Zuri visited the shrine by the river, the one she had once knelt before in her darkest night. The stones were cracked and weeds grew through them. She knelt again, this time not to beg but to give thanks. "Spirits of truth and mercy," she whispered, "you tested me through fire and sorrow. But you did not abandon me. I ask not for more blessings, only the wisdom to use them well." As she finished, a soft breeze stirred the water's surface. It shimmered with a faint glow, and for a moment, Zuri saw her reflection ripple. Not just one woman's face but 1,000 faces behind hers. Women who had been silenced. Mothers who had been shamed. Daughters who had been cast away. And she understood, she was not just Zuri. She was every one of them. By afternoon, the drums changed rhythm, louder, livelier, calling the people to gather again. The elders had decided to hold a ceremony, something the village had never done before, to rename their marketplace after her. The oldest elder, his back bent but voice firm, stood before the people and said, "Once we sold her to save our name. But her strength gave that name new life. From this day forth, this place shall be called Zuri's ground, where truth stands taller than pride." The crowd erupted, not in cheers but in a song. A song made on the spot, carried by every throat that had once spoken against her. "Zuri of the rain, Zuri of the flame. You rose when we buried your name. You taught our hearts what truth could claim. Zuri, we speak your name." As the people sang, her mother approached her, tears running freely. "Child, I cannot undo the past," she said. "But can a mother still call her daughter by her name?" Zuri turned to her slowly, a small smile breaking through. "Only if she means it." Her mother fell into her arms. They embraced tightly, the kind of embrace that dissolves years of pain into one heartbeat. And when they pulled apart, Zuri whispered, "Let no one ever again fear shame more than they fear losing love." As night descended, fires lit up across Idioma. The people danced barefoot in the mud, under a sky heavy with stars. And in the center of it all, Zuri stood, quiet, radiant, her eyes on the flames. Those flames once destroyed her home. Now they lit the way to her legend. The elders raised a gourd of palm wine and declared, "Tonight our name lives again. Not through power but through the mercy of the one we wronged." And so, in the rhythm of drums and the crackle of firelight, her name echoed through the village. Zuri, Zuri of Idioma. The same name that once brought shame, now carried honor wherever it was spoken. The rains returned that week, heavy and cleansing. The earth drank greedily as if trying to wash away the memory of every cruel word ever spoken. And when the downpour eased, the land smelled of rebirth, of wet soil, smoke and distant song. Zuri stood at the edge of the riverbank once again, her feet bare, her eyes watching the water carry fallen leaves downstream. But this time she wasn't alone. Behind her, children from the village ran and laughed, splashing water on each other. Among them was a little girl named Neka, bright-eyed and bold, who tugged at Zuri's robe. "Tell us the story again," she begged. "The story of the woman who came back when they said she was gone." Zuri smiled. "That story is not about one woman," she said softly. "It is about what truth does when lies try to bury it." The children gathered around, sitting cross-legged in the mud, eyes wide as she began to speak, her voice low, rhythmic, and full of music. "Once there was a girl they sold for silver. They thought her spirit could be weighed like gold. But her heart was fire, and fire cannot be sold. Her voice carried over the sound of the river, the rustle of leaves, the hum of insects waking from the rain. And as she spoke, the story began to travel, not through scrolls or letters but from tongue to tongue, from mother to daughter, from village to village. Months passed. Then seasons. Zuri's name grew beyond idioma. Traders carried tales of her wisdom to neighboring lands. Chiefs sent messengers to seek her counsel. Women traveled days just to sit beneath the mango tree where she spoke. And each time she told her story, she told it not as a queen or a victim, but as a lesson. Those who mock your fall, she would say, will one day bow to the strength that made you rise. When she walked through villages, children would run beside her, shouting joyfully, Zuri of truth, Zuri of mercy. But she never wore a crown. She never built a palace. Her throne was the hearts she healed. Her jewels were the tears she turned to wisdom. One evening, as dusk painted the sky with orange fire, Zuri's father came to see her. He was older now, frail, his steps slower, but his eyes were gentle. He sat beside her under the same tree where he once refused to sit with her as a daughter. Zuri, he said, his voice trembling, how did you forgive us? Zuri smiled faintly. Because I learned that anger feeds on what's already dead. And I was tired of being hungry. He bowed his head. The gods blessed me with a child who had more mercy than I ever deserved. She took his hand. And the gods blessed me with pain that taught me to see clearly. They sat in silence, listening to the night come alive, frogs croaking, drums echoing from distant homes, the low hum of peace settling over the land. Years later, after Zuri's hair had turned silver and her eyes carried the quiet of sunsets, she passed in her sleep, smiling, they said. When the villagers found her, she was resting beneath the mango tree, her hand still holding a folded piece of cloth, the same one she had worn on the day she was sold. Inside the cloth was a single line, written in her hand. They sold me to save their name. But love gave that name back to them. When they buried her, the sky broke open with rain again, soft, endless, like tears from the heavens. Every man, woman, and child of idioma stood in silence, heads bowed, as the drums of farewell echoed across the hills. And when the last mound of earth was placed, the eldest woman raised her voice and declared, From this day, every daughter born in this land shall carry the name Zuri, to remind us that pride may destroy but truth restores. Generations passed. The world changed. But the legend of Zuri did not fade. Mothers whispered her story to crying daughters. Old men told it by firelight to restless boys. Travelers from faraway lands still visited the spot where she once knelt, saying, This is where truth began to walk on 2 feet. In time, the phrase became a proverb, spoken whenever someone rose above their suffering. She has walked the path of Zuri. And so, the girl who was sold for silver became the treasure of her people. The one who taught that shame is only powerful until forgiveness speaks. Because even when a family casts you away, even when the world forgets your worth, the truth, the one you live, not the one they tell, will always find a way to speak your name with pride.